Two women. One spent 24 years as a nurse in intensive care and operating theatres. The other, an accredited mental health social worker supporting people through trauma. Like us, many of you have lived inside the systems and have your own lived and living experiences. We're not telling you our names just yet, but we will tell you why we're here. There's a wound for frontliners that workplaces won't name, and it's not just burnout, it's moral injury. What happens when the system forces you to choose between your conscience and your calling? We've lived it. Our differences are what creates unity, and the conversations that heal happen between peers. That is what Between Peers is all about.
I actually thought we might do a nice story because I think it's really easy for us to get pulled away by, some of the hard stuff that we deal with. I also think that this is interesting that it's got one of the fewest comments on it. I don't know, so maybe it won't be popular, but we'll see. Anyway, so it's from a graduate nurse and it's about nurses lifting up their young. So this will be sappy, but bear with me. I finished my ADN last month after a long 2 years. For 3 years, my partner and I have been trying to adopt. We matched in December and our daughter was born at the end of May. Unfortunately, I missed my pinning ceremony and graduation to be out of state for the birth. Hearing about this, the entire L&D unit of nurses... What did you say L&D was again?
It's labour and delivery.
Labour and delivery. Don't know why I can't keep that in my head. Okay, so the entire labour and delivery unit of nurses and techs at the hospital she was born in took the time to sneakily throw me a pinning ceremony and graduation walk. They made me a cap out of cut-up folders, I think that's so sweet, and a bouquet out of messages and affirmations, handwritten by all. I also wore a contact gown like a robe and walked past them all while the procession music played. I was pinned by my partner with a daisy and read into the profession by the charge nurse. You hear people say that nurses eat their young, but I felt so lifted in the moment and can't believe they would take the time to do all that while also taking care of the patients. So thank you again to a certain hospital in Arizona. So this is another American one. I wish I could nominate the whole unit for daisies. One of the comments said, that's amazing, the eat your young thing gets talked about a lot, but this is the side nobody posts about. Congrats on the degree and the little one. Both are huge. And I've heard you joke about how nurses eat their young as well.
Oh, they do, but I think the reality is when you think about nursing, but I think this is human nature because we're forever, this is taking a different tangent, because we forever are giving, just giving, to the point where you actually then become people-pleasing because it's expected to give at the cost of toilet breaks, lunch breaks, sleep, everything. It's just forever giving. And don't get me wrong, you are literally born to be it or not. Yeah. That's just goes without saying. That aside, there's also injustice in the profession. And as a result, there then tends to be this dark side, right? And so the dark side is eating the young, but it's cutthroat. Who gets the promotion? Who gets this? Who gets that?
So like you're pitted against each other?
Yeah. So there's this, I don't know, I really don't know, and if it's even able to be unpacked. If you actually are eating your young because of injustice, or are you eating your young because of mismanagement from a hierarchical perspective of creating false competition? I don't know.
I actually wondered if it was a trial by fire. You know how, for example, with doctors, that, then I guess you see on TV, sorry, it's got to be true, right? On the soaps and all that.
Oh, God bless, it has to be true because it's on bloody TV, yeah.
That, they do stupid, crazy hours when they're residents and that's expected of them. Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like a trial by fire. You've got to go through this hard stuff to actually prove that you belong in the profession.
That sort of unfortunately resonates.
Yeah.
Like if you I've never thought of it that way, but it tracks. Like if you think about it, the shit we have to do to survive the profession, like genuinely to survive the profession, because like it's really fucked up. I don't know if you can say that word, but said it, sorry.
Yeah.
It's so traumatizing for the soul if you sit down and debunk it through and go through it all to your body and your nervous system, that I wonder if it's just by accident. It's not necessarily a precognition state that you're actually trying to do. I mean, is it self-preservation? Is it the value of what you've gone through to get to that? So you want to protect your rank? I don't know.
Or is it, I mean, if I say kick the cat, do you know what I mean? When you've been abused, like, you know, the dad abuses the mum abuses the kid goes and kicks the cat, right?
You know what? I reckon there's a little bit of that in there. Yeah. There has to be because so if we're going with that as a thought process, that means our bosses are kicking us because they've been kicked.
Down. Yeah, exactly. So you're doing the next one down.
Because it's our nervous system releasing.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's any studies that substantiate that thought process, because that seriously, I would never have thought of that. Like when you mentioned this, that you wanted to talk about this one, I was a bit like, what?
Well, it only had 14 comments.
It only had 14 comments. Like, why are we talking about this, like, widow? But,
so I want to bring up another point.
Okay, go for it, yeah.
And this is more a completely different tangent, but sort of similar. I've always found, because of who I am and the type of stuff I like to do for self-care, so I like to make things for self-care. I'm a hella, like crafty person, and I think a lot of us are, right? So I like to make gifts for people to show that I care. Like I put in, as other people like to make food to give to people, right? You make food.
I love food and I love making stuff.
Yeah,
I am definitely, that's my love language. But it's also grounding for me, and it's my self-care, because not only does it ground me, it allows me escapism.
Yeah. Well, I really love working with students. It's something that really lights me up. And across the mental health profession, I've worked with human service students, I've worked with social work students, I've worked with counselling students, I've worked with psychology students. And when they finish their placement with me, I will generally make them a gift. I'll also make a gift for people who, are leaving or whatever. But I find that, one, it becomes expected. You do it for one, you've got to do it for everyone. So that it can become really taxing. I like to make something personalised. I tend to find that I want to do better gifts, I think, for social workers, because in our country they've got 500 hours that they have to do for free. And so that's a lot. Do you know what I mean? Especially, they can't really work when they're doing their placement.
But you can't. Like, the reality is you're doing slave labour. I find it very, 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 very interesting that even in nursing, right, even now, you can see it right now. The students are going on clinical placement.
Yeah.
There's hospital parking.
Yeah.
The shifts that they're expected to work and the hours they're expected to work may or may not have public transport.
Yeah.
And they are expected to partake at a decent functioning level, even though they are a student.
And they've got assessments
and they have assessments and
reflections and all of that sort of stuff.
And to a degree, if you are assigned the capacity to turn around and work with a student, you're actually doing partial of that assessment. Yes, the university has to actually formally do it, but you, as the person working with them, are partly involved in that assessment process.
Well, as a social worker, it's massively involved. So if it's a social work student, I have to do a minimum of an hour, but they're supposed to get an hour and a half of supervision every week. So I take that half hour as not formal supervision, but, they've got a rough case, or they come in and it's just ad hoc supervision with myself or with other senior staff members. So that is a minimum of 16 hours that I have to take out of the time that they're with me to provide them with supervision. That's without the training. That's without the extra conversations that they need to have. That's without the, all the other stuff that goes in it. So I'm doing that stuff. And then I find that the organisations that I'm often working for don't respect the fact, because I know how hard it is to do 16 to 18 weeks of volunteering 4 days a week, 7.5 hours, like a full day. Like, that's what they're doing. And so I value that. I know how hard it was for me. I can imagine how hard it is in this economic climate, because it is way more cooked than when I did it. I mean, it was hard for me as a single mum, however many years ago, doing it, but I can't imagine what it's like now with rent and everything like it is. And so I go out of my way to provide something to go, I appreciate you. But the organisation that's getting all the free labour often doesn't even provide them with a frickin' cake. Do you know what I mean? Or it's cake day, which is like one day a month that's shared with everyone that's getting, you know what I mean? Like it's not even something beautiful or personal.
Yeah, but I wonder if that's
values them.
But that's a whole different topic, isn't it? Really, like if you think about it, is the human gone out of humanity?
I don't know.
Like, I don't know, but
I think it's more, now we're going back to systemic issues and me being a bit all like grr about it. I think, it's just, we're another cog in the wheel, another brick in the wall.
Oh, Jesus, now we're going to go sing that in our head like, Jesus Christ, thanks. But when we think about it, do we eat our young or is it a systemic issue?
Well,
and I think we're highlighting multi-layers. It's a multifaceted problem. But how do we change that?
I would say social workers don't eat their young. I would say most of us, unless it's in a hospital setting, I think eating the young is a hospital setting, trial by fire, like what we were talking about before. Whereas in an NGO, I'm like, come on, you can do it. I know this is hard. Critical reflection, like think about, your practice and all of, you know what I mean? And all of that sort of build them up kind of to get them ready for the real workforce. But,
all right, so then we need to really articulate conversation around, like most of my experience is predominantly going to be public.
Yeah, health.
Public health, but I have been exposed to, out of the 25 plus years of my background of nursing, more than 5 years, but less than 10 years was private.
Yeah.
So yes, I've got a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I'm not just public.
So I'd actually say, though, there is a little part of me, now that I'm actually sitting here reflecting on it, that is a bit eat your young. Because I want to know that if a social worker student comes through me, that they're going to be able to hack it out there. So one of the things that I will do with a final placement student is give them a client that has quite what would be considered difficult diagnoses or a difficult presentation that's managed. Like I know that they're managed and I want to check that they're able to do that and work with that particular presentation while I'm overseeing them. So I know that nothing, like terrible is going to happen.
But you listen to this, because I'm just listening to you and I've only known you as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
But the question I have for you is, that's just come into my field or awareness is, does that mean because of the background you have, because of the awareness you have, and because of that exact statement you just said, does that mean you're raising your family with a similar view? And what I mean by that is, are you then wanting your children to be able to survive what's out there right now, which is housing issues and
toughen up, buttercup, right?
And wondering how we as a society is going to survive, because I think it's all interrelated. Because I'm wondering if what's happening in our workplace, right? Going back to the workplace, what's happening in our workplace, and is it systemic in play there, and is that also then impacting us privately as well, and then us wanting to help our children?
Okay, so I'm going to say there's two sides to that. One is like, dust yourself off, rub dirt in the wound. Do you know what I mean? Like toughen up, buttercup. And I think the other side is, and I think you could probably agree with this, and I think a lot of nurses, depending on the area that they work in, is that we are frontline workers. If we don't do our jobs right, people can fucking die. And I want to make sure that I'm sending safe workers out there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to make sure that if someone expresses suicidal ideation to one of my students in their first week after they graduate, that they actually can hear it and go and get the appropriate supervision, or they can go and see the appropriate person, or they know the appropriate protocol to do. And they don't just go, oh, I feel too scared to ask if that person's feeling suicidal, or do you know what I mean?
Or clarifying
whatever.
around
do you know
whatever.
What I mean? They just ignore it. So, like, I want to actually know that they're safe practitioners. And so that's maybe a little bit of why I don't even like saying I eat my young. I don't feel like I do, but why I can, if I see one of my students having bad practice, that's unacceptable to me. Absolutely unacceptable. And I guess maybe it's my rigid thinking, but really it's because we've got people's lives in our hands. And it might not be like suicide, and even in a case management perspective, if someone comes to you as a social worker or as a nurse, and they're often in their most vulnerable state. You know, with a nurse, they're unwell. Do you know what I mean? That's a very vulnerable state. For me, they're going through a life situation. They might be facing homelessness or not have money, or do you know what I mean? Whatever. And they're feeling so vulnerable. And I want the person to support them in the best way that they can, in the kindest way possible. I can be quite harsh with them about that. So I find that duplicity interesting.
No,
I wonder what
because
other people think.
Because the reality is, you originally came in with a preconceived idea for this topic and this conversation, and it's gone on a whole different tangent.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to talk about how the fact that I notice I'm burnt out when I don't want to make the freaking gifts for people anymore, and I get pissed at the organisation I'm in for not doing that for them. Yeah. And I was going to go back and say it's often, the frontline workers that know how hard it is to give up that time to actually do the education, to become a nurse, to become a social worker, to become a frontline worker, whatever that is. It's not easy, and it's often us that's then doing the congratulations and the care and the support and showing the support and understanding of the time they put in, not just, oh, well, yeah, that's what you're expected to do. That's where I was sort of imagining we were going to head with that.
It's the duplicity that, conversely, we do at our young, but at the same time, simultaneously, we want them to be the best of the best, because at the end of the day, lives matter and they're on the front line. And it's at the cost of another person's life, depending on what decision they make at that very moment, at that very point in time. And I think the analogy of eating our young is 100% accurate, but it's nuanced with that view in play. What's your take?
Well, I think it's that rub dirt on it, toughen up buttercup. I wonder if it's a bit of our generation of, being left outside, latchkey kids, left outside, drunk from the hose, kind of stuff.
You realise you're showing our age. You know that, don't you?
So I think that there's part of it that, someone once said to my daughter, they were being a bit hard on her. And they said because they didn't want her to get shocked when she went out in the world and people were hard to her. You know what I mean? So they were being hard to her. So I wonder if it's a little bit of that mentality as well, that kind of only the tough survive.
That's just opened a whole can of worms.
You're welcome.
No, because if you look at today's society, like genuinely look at today's society, that's going to open up the whole can of worms of that. Are we raising our children potentially with gloves? And there's no right or wrong answer, but are we raising them with gloves, and therefore then when they attempt to go out in the workplace, they're not employable potentially because their sense of reality is not reality to what is expected by the way the system currently stands as of today.
I'll say that I've noticed pre-COVID and post-COVID that the calibre of students is different. And I don't know if there's been a generational change or a change in the way we do things or what has happened. But I never thought or even imagined that I would fail students before COVID, because I thought that everyone was in it for the right reasons and everyone wanted to help people and all of that sort of stuff. I have found myself failing more and more students after COVID because they were focused more on themselves and what they wanted and their mental health and well-being and all of that sort of stuff before the client that they were supporting. And that, I wonder if it's a deep fundamental flaw with me and my way of thinking, and I'm actually wondering if that's a whole nother topic.
Well,
but you know what I mean, right?
But this goes to the analogy. I literally watched, as weird as it sounds, a TikTok, right? And the TikTok was the analogy of you ask a neurotypical the question of why you do it that way. And what they really mean is, why are you doing it that way? That way's wrong. Do it my way or the highway. If you ask a neurodivergent, why are you doing it that way? And you ask them, they're actually going, hang on, are you doing it a different way? And is that way better? Yeah. And if that way is better, then the way I'm doing it, actually, oh my God, your way's better. I want to take that and actually put it as part of my programming and reinvent myself because your way actually makes more sense. I'll do it your way. So I'm wondering if that's in play as well.
I guess I've noticed a certain number of students that they would see a client or a patient or whatever, and then they would go, I need an hour to reflect on my well-being. And I sort of think, well, you're in your final placement. You don't need an hour after you see a client to reflect on your well-being. What's wrong with this picture? Why don't you have your protection up? Do you know what I mean? Why are you being so centered on yourself? When we're with a client, we push everything back behind us and we focus on our client. Our stuff doesn't matter in that space. We deal with our stuff later. And is that a fundamental flaw with me? Is it something wrong with me and my generation? And I'm wondering if we need to make that another podcast, and maybe we should wrap it up here.
Oh, I think we need to wrap it up because it's essentially 2 videos meshed that we'll be joining together. But please, anyone else out there, when you eventually come across this podcast, add down in the comments your viewpoint, because remember, there's no right or wrong. It's let's have a healthy, honest conversations around what's going on and understanding why, because at the end of the day, this is a safe space for frontline workers.
Well, hopefully.
Well, the intention, the real core intention, is a safe space for health workers, and that's why we're anonymous. That's why we're not showing faces, because eventually we'd like to have even people potentially come onto the podcast, but we don't want faces identified just so that people feel safe, but they are heard. So
also so we can still work with our clients and patients and they don't recognise us.
Yeah, true.
We can still work.
But it is a journey. All right, on that note, guys, please leave your comments down below and we look forward to seeing you on the next podcast while I sit here and eat our chocolate. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.